Now let's return to the Middle East, where two leading Israeli human rights groups have said for the first time that Israel's actions in Gaza amount to genocide. In separate reports, B'Tselem and Physicians for Human Rights highlighted indiscriminate bombing campaigns, the killing of health workers, and the reported forced displacement of Palestinians. Israel has always denied claims of genocide. And staying with the Palestinians, because France and Saudi Arabia are co-chairing a 3-day UN conference aimed at reviving hopes for a two-state solution between Israel and the Palestinians. For France, it's also about building support for President Macron's plan to recognize a Palestinian state later this year, the first G7 country to do so. The US firmly opposes the move and is boycotting the meeting and has warned of diplomatic fallouts. Mr. Macron hopes his move will pressure Israel and rally countries like the UK to join him. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from London by the international affairs analyst, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz. Good to see you, Dr. Laskiewicz. So diplomatic efforts are continuing to try to build consensus around a future two-state solution between Israel and the Palestinians. A 3-day UN conference chaired by France and Saudi Arabia is underway in New York. Dozens of countries, including the UK, have sent representatives, but not the US. How viable is this attempt to rekindle the wider peace process?
Well, the answer is, of itself, it is insufficient, but it is serious and significant. By serious, that is, there is a possibility, if enough nations get around, that it will become more and more difficult for Israel and America to stop. But the really significant aspect of it is threefold. Number one, France. Already we have seen a very important aspect that the dollar is losing its status as the world's reserve currency. Here, we've got another aspect diplomatically. Suddenly France is in the limelight, not USA. It in itself brings around the third point of France and Saudi Arabia, if you like, being in the UN with the world. Please remember the UN is about food supplies to Palestine as well. And increasingly, America and Israel isolated. And this is another aspect. Donald Trump's policy, because NATO militarily is ineffective compared to the USA, that's to say the other parts of NATO, and his business of treating Europe as a has-been, has worked very well in the military field, but in the diplomatic field, and of course in the economic field, as I said before, it is failing. And the point here is that America not only is becoming isolationist, but is becoming isolated. And so back to your original point, owing to all these things, there is certainly not only will the two-state solution be revived, but it is serious and significant, this conference.
And of course, our analysts are suggesting that there's never been such a serious split between the US and its European allies over the future of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and a crisis for the concept of a negotiated two-state solution. And yet it was the Americans under President Clinton that in September 1993 oversaw the signing of the Oslo Accords and brokered the two-state solution.
Yes, there are two aspects to this. Although the analysts have pointed this out, it should be stated that it's part of a much wider rift between Europe and the USA, which I mentioned before, which USA started. And now suddenly, if you like, Europe has found its independent voice. France, of course, being the most important diplomatic nation in the EU, and historically, of course, a world diplomatic leader in its own right, albeit a century ago or 2-3 centuries ago, but even so. But the other aspect, which you said is very important, is the Oslo Accords. But it must be remembered, the Oslo Accords had much potential in them. And this was because the PLO under Yasser Arafat had agreed to recognize Israel. Suddenly everything was possible. But unfortunately, Israel didn't like this. the people that one of the groups, for example, the most important group, the Zionists, who don't want a two-state solution, which is why Netanyahu has consistently ruled it out, even when he could have set it up from, let's say, 2005 all the way up to now. In other words, all the time when he's a very important politician. The point is they've ruled this out. Not only that, but they quite deliberately supported Hamas as an alternative to the PLA, and therefore now find themselves back, so to speak, at square one, in the sense that the two-state solution is back, but, and here comes the problem, America is, if you like, sidelined on this issue in the sense that it is trying to defend the monostate, which, after all the problems of the Israeli occupation in Gaza, is becoming diplomatically increasingly untenable, even though militarily it still remains in force.
Dr. Marek Laskiewicz is the international affairs analyst who was talking to me on the line there from London.